Hello and welcome to this Unicourse video. My name is Ashley and the topic of today's session is managing resources. So what we're going to talk about today is the importance of managing resources and gaining maximum output in the organisation, the link to operational management, the link to supply chain management, procurement and purchasing, and ways to ensure that you are managing the resources within the organisation effectively, really. So let us start with a couple of definitions. So firstly, let's touch upon what is meant by a resource. So a resource can be defined as a person, asset, material or capital which can be used to accomplish a goal. Then we can then look at resource management. So what does that mean? It means human, financial, physical and knowledge factors that provide an organisation the means to perform its organisational and business functions and processes. And the Business Dictionary defines this really well, I think. It is about practical, economical and efficient use of resources. And, that's probably one of the most significant factors in maximising business profitability and the organisation achieving success, making the most of the resources that you've got. For efficient resource management, people need to be held accountable for the organisation, maintenance and safe use of physical resources according to the policies and the procedures of the organisation. And it's often seen that systems will need to be updated and new plans implemented to ensure effective use and maintenance of the resources as well. So let's delve a little bit deeper into the different types of resources. So there's two different types of resources that we can see. There's tangible and intangible resources. Organisations will have both of them at their disposal, usually. Tangible resources are generally those that can be touched or seen. Like an example could be, physical resources such as the building or the chairs that they're sitting on, and equipment or financial resources such as money. Intangible resources are more abstract and are often found within or amongst the staff in the organisation, and there could be skills or knowledge, information, things like that. Managing resources is key to cost-effective output. It takes resources to produce a result, however big or small. Employees will find tasks challenging or basically just unachievable if the correct resources are unavailable at the right time. Having the right people at the right time with the right equipment to get the job done is essential in resource management. So really think about that. Now let's look at the different types. Now, equipment, probably the first one that people think of when they're thinking about resource management. So what equipment that they need to do the job. Then you've got the people, which for me is the most important resource that any organisation can have. They're the assets that you need to support and develop to grow, to achieve the maximum output from an organisation. Then you've got the land in which your organisation sits on or works in, or, even, if it's remote workers, you can look at things like properties as well. The materials that we need in order to be able to, provide that service or, give the best product that we possibly can. Information is really important as well, as they can give information, and managing information as a really valuable resource can be what makes you different from another organisation. So really consider information management as a key resource. Energy, and this can link to gas and electricity, things like that, as a really important resource, because without them we couldn't function. But also considering the energy of the people and the employees that you hire, and consider their motivation and engagement and things like that. Then time, which is people say time is money. And that's, due to the fact that it is probably one of the biggest and most valuable resources that we have. You have a member of staff usually working 9 till 5. If they're working above and beyond that, that time is a really big resource that you might need in order to be able to reach the maximum output and the goal that you've set yourself for that quarter. So really consider how time is used and utilised, and the way that you lead a team and the way that you manage a team as well will lead to the employees performing well and utilising the time to be the most effective that they can be, and that's a really important thing to consider when you're looking at resources. How you control how people are working and managing their time in order to be able to make sure that they're not using their time ineffectively. Finances, if you haven't got the finances available to pay for resources as well, it can be really limiting for what you can do. So think about if you haven't got the finances to keep that building afloat, to pay the rent, to pay the gas, the electricity, things like that, then the organisation isn't going to succeed. So finances is really important. And I always think as well, if you've got a big piece of equipment that you need to be able to provide that service or them goods, consider how long, that the lifespan of that product is. And as it's coming to the end, it might be worth putting money aside from your profits to be able to make sure that you have got them finances available when you need to buy that big piece of equipment to be able to keep the company going. PPE, let's think about, HSE, the Health and Safety Executive, have standards and regulations and legislations that we have to meet in accordance with health and safety requirements. So making sure and ensuring that your staff are safe. So making sure that them resources are available when they need them for specific tasks that are essential in resource management. And then thinking about software as well, if you think about what software is available for your staff, it might need updating every so often. You might need somebody to update that. So it's the time of that professional to maybe come in and do that as well. So, and that links in with a couple of different resources. That links in with maybe the people, the equipment, the time, the software. A couple of different things need to be thought of when you are just looking at maybe one resource. They might interlink with others. And then you've got, suppliers who, are really important in providing you with the resources that you need to function. So ensuring that them relationships are, concrete, ensuring that them contracts are, really, really written down, signed and clarified, and all the objectives are noted. Service agreements are, set in stone is really important as well. Bill Daniels defined 3 factors that should be considered in the analysis of resources. So we're going to touch upon them now. Okay, so firstly, he believes that the resources need to be defined initially. Now, this could be done in a work breakdown structure. It could be done in the planning phase for a new project. It might be done if you're opening a new department, but you need to be able to define what is needed for a specific task. It's really important to notify everybody who's involved as well what's needed. You may need to get approval as well from a CEO in order to be able to identify and provide evidence for what is needed for that specific task. For example, if you're doing a video for a project, you might have to put a proposal in for a new resource of like a video camera or a lens or something like that. Wait for it to be approved by the CEO or the finance department or the head of department before you can go ahead and start using it. Then the availability. Now, can you get hold of them? Let's think of this now as it might just be that you need a microphone for 10 minutes of a presentation. You need to make sure that them resources are available for you when you're doing that. You might need to ensure that you have a external quality assessor to be able to assess a certain a specific piece of work or a risk assessment before something can go through. So can I get them if I need them? So it's thinking about how you can ensure that they are available at the time that you need them. And it might not be that you need them all of the time. It might just be that you need it for a small amount of time. So it might be, I only need this person at this time, or I only need this bit of kit at this time, or I might only need this bit of money initially, and then, but also consider when you're thinking about it from a person's perspective, which is what, Bill really looks at. He looks at it more from an employee or a performer's perspective, is the control that people have. So is authority needed to gain access to resources? And that's really, really important, because the less control somebody has, the less output, or the more wait and time. And if they haven't got, authority to access a specific software system or computer or something like that, and they have to wait for somebody else, then their time and the time of the project is being delayed, maybe because they have to wait for that authority and that access. So really important to consider. Bill puts the employer and the performer of the task at the forefront of resource management, and I think that that's really important. And he considers if they have a high definition availability and a control level, then there's going to be a higher output. So what I want you to do now is just to have a little think. I'm going to give you the question. I want you to just sit and think for a couple of minutes, maybe do a little spider diagram or write bullet points, and just consider the answer to this question. You need to acquire a computer for a staff member at work. What resources and costs might be involved? Just think about that for a minute or two. You may need to pause me for a second while you write that down. So your answer may have included things like the cost of the computer itself. It might even be the cost of the time it takes for the person who's researching the cheapest computer or the cheapest product on the market. That also needs to be considered, that time. The price of installation, or the price of the IT specialist or the broadband installation, the cost of any other additional equipment like a mouse or a keyboard. It might be HDMI cables, plug adapters, plug-ins, software system, delivery costs, cost for training the new member of staff. It might be even the cost of additional health and safety equipment such as anti-glare lighting, safe cable covers, things like that. You might even want to think even further to the future and think of things like the cost of the paper, the printer, the ink, the cost of the person's eye tests every 2 years, which is what's suggested by the HSE. So there's a lot of things that need to be considered. And it's vital to think not only of the cost of the product, but the thorough life, the cost of maintenance. Will the new product need to be updated regularly, or would the cost of maintenance go up the higher the lifespan of the product? Do you know the product's lifespan? Is there a warranty or a service agreement, anything like that? Consider all of these areas when you're looking at, resource factors, okay? So next, we're going to look at resource planning, but we're going to focus more on the person here, okay? So let's think about, if you know that you've got, a new project coming up, having the right people for the job is really important. Because if you do have the right people for the right job, it's more than likely that them as a resource are going to be getting utilised well, Operations management is about turning inputs into outputs. All managers have responsibilities for managing the resources and operations of their organisation, along with the responsibility for controlling operating costs is the costs of ensuring that the right people are, are on the right task, and are getting given the right objectives and are being involved in the right projects. And it's about producing outputs, which might be the goods or the services, to meet the client's needs or even the market needs. So, in operations management or, managing people in projects or activities or in your department even, it's about using economical, efficient and the effective use of the resources for them people as well. So it's important to understand that when you're thinking about the right person for the job, that you understand their role and their responsibilities, but also understanding what their experience is, what the skill base is, what the knowledge base is, what qualifications they've got, what, are they competent to be able to fulfill that role. And if not, it might just mean that you just give them a little bit of training before the project comes up. It might be that you have them shadowing somebody else doing that job before they actually are involved in it. It might be that you've got a coach or a mentor there just helping them through that. Or it might be that you're just going to go to a third party or a contractor or outsource somebody because maybe you only need that person for a day or two. But it's also important to consider when you are on a project or you're managing something big, and you're thinking about resource management in relation to the people, you want to think about not only the person's expertise, but how many people that you need to complete a task. So it might be that you need 3 people to complete a task in this time because you've got a deadline. Or it might be that you need 1 person to complete a time, but it'll take 3 times as long. So it just depends on what that deadline is. And you need to think about how you're going to utilise that person in that place, and whether they've got the time, for that as well. So when we are thinking about, equipment, you want to think, when do we need them? Okay, you need to think about what tools, software, hardware, what standards you need to meet as well. So will you need these the whole time, pre-project, post-project, all the way through? Is there a specific time frame that you're going to be needing them? And that relates to the people as well. Think about, the critical personnel team and what equipment they might need to be able to do that job successfully. Remember, the right people at the right time at the right place with the right equipment to get the job done in the most efficient, and effective way, really. Negotiate the where and when to get them as well, internal, external or third party. Additional proposals may be needed for specific equipment, so remember that. But let's think about this. Let's go and think about the standards. So the health and safety requirements. So the Health and Safety at Work Act 1974 outlines, specific requirements that organisations need to meet. So they must ensure that they have the right processes in place to minimise or eliminate risk. And that's really important because accidents happen and sometimes they can't be prevented, but most of the time they can be. Risk assessments allow organisations to assess the risks and implement steps or stages or processes or policies to prevent accidents. Accidents can be costly to an organisation and they can cause injury to individuals, which might mean loads of time off, might mean personal injury claims, it might mean completely new risk assessments being done, new processes being implemented, new PPE needing to be bought. They can be it's really, really important to consider the tools and even how they're maintained. It might be that the hardware needs to be pat tested every couple of weeks. Think about things like this when you are considering resource planning and when you are considering equipment. So let's have a little think about what can go wrong, issues or problems related with resources, and they do differ from one organisation to another. You might have common resource problems, and that might be in relation to supply chain management. It might be in relation to COVID. It might be in relation to Brexit. There might be loads of different reasons, but the issues do differ greatly from one industry to another. So maybe have a little think to yourself, write yourself a couple of bullet points and consider what issues or problems your organisation or department has, and then think about different ways that you can overcome them issues. And sometimes it might be that you are seeing the symptoms of problems and issues, so it's really getting to the root cause of that problem in order to be able to solve it. But some of the things I've provided here as examples are sufficiently trained and competent personnel, so ensuring that people have the right skills and knowledge to be able to complete a task effectively. It might be that there's minimal funding or overused resources, therefore quality is being affected, and it's really, really important that you have quality processes, standardisation processes or checking processes to ensure the best quality of your product or service. And sometimes that can link back to compliance or standardisation, or even, hiring an external quality manager just to be able to check over stuff. It might be that that's part of standard procedure anyway, according to legislation, regulation, standards in your industry. So it's important to be fully aware of that as well. Some common issues, that have been really common since Brexit has been supplier delays and the costs as well, and the cost increases lately. So people have been shopping around for different suppliers, negotiating new terms with different suppliers, getting other people on board, maybe going a little bit more closer to home than overseas due to the effects of, legislative complications. So, but it's also a major issue that organisations can't always deal with the changing demands of the customer as well. So it's important to think about, when you're looking at resource management, that you've got the products or the services available for them if the need for them goes up. One thing that I seen a couple of years ago in an organisation that I worked in is the marketing and the sales team just didn't really work in sync, and the marketing team had a new promotion coming out for one of the products in the organisation, and it was a complete success. They went from having 4 of the products being sold to like 450, so it went completely up, but they didn't have the people to be able to manage the sales that was happening because of the market and promotions, and it wasn't streamlined to them what the promotion was. So there was a lot of unsatisfied customers because of it. So it's important to be able to understand that if there is change in demands, that the team fully work together and you have got the right resources in the right place at the right time to be able to meet them demands as well. The reliability and provision of equipment is really important, and that comes down to capacity planning. So capacity planning is the process of monitoring a resource's use, ensuring the capacity is the maximum output rate. So this process includes the estimated time for the acquisition of resources and making sure that that time is added to meet the fluctuations in demand, as I've just mentioned as well. Organisations will consider the reserve capacity. This is calculated based on the scenario of a quick increase in demand or a decrease in production or service capacity, and it's sometimes called the capacity cushion. So only by considering the total acquisition costs can you make a business judgment and decisions associated with the equipment purchases, and if appropriate, the payback periods or the return of investment. Other things that you might want to consider might include through life maintenance costs as well. So thinking about the likely cost throughout the useful life of the equipment and opportunity costs. So the costs of, what I mean by this is the costs of any lost opportunity resulting from the money having been committed to the special equipment that is being purchased, to be get me. So yeah, really consider issues and problems and think of backups or think of ways that you can get around them issues or products or problems with the resource and the resource management. Purchasing and procurement is, something that really needs to be considered in resource management. Procurement management identifies a need for goods or services, obtains the requirements, and ensures a well-managed relationship with the supplier. But some organisations don't always think about the details when linking to purchasing and procurement, and it's really important that you think about this in resource management. Some organisations might even refer to procurement as the whole process leading to purchase as procurement. So some organisations can waste much money if procurement decisions are not clearly thought through. Standard operating procedures relating to procurement and purchasing can help reduce costs. They can also, help to link communication and create consistency, even standardise an inventory, if you like. Standard procedures may include who is authorised to make the purchase, which suppliers to use, an amount that can be purchased, the process of purchase, cost limitations, and they all need to really be considered. So if organisations use the same supplier, it might reduce costs, but it's important to consider contracts, service level agreements, that negotiations can take place if the same items are being purchased or if there's higher level or volumes. Contracts can be agreed and re-agreed. Charges can be significantly reduced if the company's getting bigger and the amount that they're supplying to them is getting bigger and bigger. So depending on the product, it may be necessary to shop around every couple of months, especially if there's big changes to the external environment, political changes, economical changes. Think about Brexit, COVID. There's so much leaving the EU had a big impact on loads of organisations' supply chains. But it's important to consider what's best for you. Although the suppliers are big stakeholders, they do also want the work because they might be big customers of yours, external customers, but customers, if you like, because without your business, they might not be running effectively. So it's important to think about negotiations there. Always consider as well when you are negotiating that time is money. So in order for you to have a really stringent, process relating to resource management, procurement, purchasing, things like that, it's good to have a good audit system. It's usual practice to have, some sort of process for auditing. This protects the organisation from fraud or proprietary. Using an independent person to check the purchasing audit will allow for effective procurement management as well. The audit system could consist of a purchasing log or a stockroom check every quarter. It might be good to check standards, check that policies are following standards as well. That procedures are linking in with policies, okay, so always checking them policies. And you can see on this diagram, looking at identifying a need and then evaluating and selecting the supplier negotiate the contract, receive an invoice, receive an audit and delivery, complete payment, but maintain audits by continuously reviewing and checking the processes. It is key to good resource management. So I'm only going to touch on lean because it is a big topic, but let us just look at how lean can be implemented in the organisation for the efficient use of resources. So lean comes from lean manufacturing, and it's the process of waste reduction and elimination. But do not, be confused or misled by the word manufacturing. Lean principles are helpful in all business disciplines and organisations. So it was James Womack who introduced lean in his book, The Machine That Changed the World. And it was famously adopted by Toyota. So lean manufacturing is a set of principles that enable simplification and organisation of the workplace, really, and resources particularly. Lean aims to reduce waste to maintain equipment and the working environment while ensuring people are responsive and responsible to waste, and they're responsive to client needs as well. So, I'm just touching on the 8 different areas of waste in lean manufacturing, and just things to consider when you're thinking about resource management. Overproduction, it's one of the first points in lean manufacturing and one of the first categories, and it's about producing optimum quantities to match demand. Production and producing more is considered a waste of resource in lean. Waiting, so the lag time between stages of production, for example, or the lag time between the wait and service as well. So, it can be seen in both ways. Inventory, so the stock levels and a work in progress inventories should not be excessive. You don't want them to be excessive. You want to know exactly where you are and have the right amount at the right time. So then transportation, so sending inefficient movement of materials should be eliminated, really. And then over processing, so thinking about the amount of time that's spent unnecessarily, really, on a product. So over processing is something that is done quite a lot in organisations. You might have to send this to that person to get approved by that person to get approved by that person. And I've seen so many times in people's assignments relating to lean management, them just removing 1 or 2 of the processes but still ensuring quality can really save a lot of money for an organisation. So then motion looks at the people and the equipment and the need to move between tasks efficiently. And sometimes you can use tools and techniques and project management, like Gantt charts, where you can see that this job and this job can be done at the same time, but this job and this job need to be done after that one and after that one, and it might just help with the motion. And then defects looks at the time spent finding and correcting production mistakes. So you want to minimise that. So and that goes a little bit into Kaizen, which is more about waste management as well and minimising defects. But have a little research into that if you want a little bit more detail on that. But yeah, defects, you want to minimise them defects, so really get into the root cause of where them defects are coming from in order to be able to sort that problem out ASAP. And then workforce, so thinking about the efficient and effective use of the workforce. And I am really committed and think it's really essential to have a really good stringent performance management system in place to ensure the efficient and effective use of the workforce. If you want your workforce and your people to be working to maximum capacity, you want to be managing their performance closely and ensuring that that's done. Now I am just going to touch upon the basic principles, but you can go and read upon this in a little bit more detail, because lean and resource management go really, really well hand in hand. But the focus of lean manufacturing is discovering efficiencies, doing things better, and removing waste while maintaining quality. So remembering that quality is really important. Lean manufacturing takes a customer value perspective, seeking to establish what the customer is willing to pay for. Customers invariably require value. They should not be charged for defects or for the extra cost of holding excessive inventories or stock. So basically, they should not pay for manufacturing waste or service waste, which is viewed as anything that does not add value to the product. So if you've got a team that's managing a project for a new innovative product that's come into place, but the people on that team are not really qualified in project management or in working in projects, and they take 5 times as long to actually put that into practice, or if the marketing team take 5 times as long to put the marketing adverts up, or the customers shouldn't have to pay for the cost it takes to get that to market. It's important to consider that the customer, it's a customer value perspective. So, but it is also a continuous improvement perspective as well. And you can look again, at Kaizen when thinking about that. And yeah, I really like Kaizen. So look into that in a little bit more detail. It's basically about incremental improvements and minimising ineffectiveness, really. So we're going to touch upon now supply chain management, and just consider that when looking at the supply chain, it's important to consider that there is close links with resource management. Okay, so making sure, supply chain management, it can be defined as handling the entire production flow of a good or service to maximise quality, delivery, customer service and profitability. It has a strategic and operational focus on customer satisfaction, basically. And any organisation that wants to be successful and operate efficiently will really, really understand the importance of an effective supply chain management system. So it's about, coordinating the flow of materials and information between the different operations as well at all levels. So SCM relates to supply and purchasing management, contract agreement, understanding the processes, ensuring, that there's, you can think about it as the seven R's of purchasing can be achieved. So I'll touch upon these now. So the 7 rights. So it's basically about obtaining the right materials. So, once you've got that, you need to make sure that they're there at the right time. So thinking about inventories like we've just discussed, in the right amounts. Because imagine if you've got way too much, where are you going to put it? Where are you going to put that stock? Then you might have to pay for that stock to be held somewhere. And then is that really managing your resources effectively? Not really. Making sure that they're delivered to the right place, because that could cause problems. Making sure that they're delivered to that right place by the supplier with the right service at the right price as well, and all that needs to be negotiated as well. So really consider supply chain management when you're thinking about resource management, okay? And let's have a think about whether resources can be a competitive advantage. Well, yeah, they can be. A resource can be seen as a competitive advantage if it is valuable. So think about, does it add value or reduce the cost, of creating value? Think, is it rare? Is it distinctive to your organisation? Does anybody else have it? If they don't, it is. Is it hard to imitate, or is it costly to imitate? Can you do it for cheaper? And is the resource exploitable by other organisations? And that's important to consider as well. And some people refer to this as the Rio framework, and it can be used to analyse resources. Some organisations can use this to understand how resources can offer a competitive advantage, or a combination of resources, as you can see on this table that I've included. So you can really break down, is this resource valuable? Is it rare? And you can think about whether it's a competitive advantage, whether you've got a sustained advantage, a temporary advantage in the market. So really think about this from a competitive point of view. So the 4 E's, I want to talk a little bit about the 4 E's, as I think that it demonstrates what's necessary to gain the most output when managing resources. So it demonstrates operations management in an organisation, and it informs of an analysis, turning input into output using these 4 components. So when I say inputs, they relate to the economy and concerns issues like what is paid for, the resources, the materials. This could mean analysing how materials are produced at a lower cost or a higher volume to reduce the costs. An example could be buying a more expensive product with a longer lifespan, offering more value for money. So think about that. Or it can be used in different areas, not just in the one area, or can it be used in the future, think about things like that. Then when you're looking at processes, and the efficiency, you're thinking about always think about how things are done. Processes do relate to efficiency and how they're done, and how they're done effectively as well. Processes are procedures, systems that need to be followed, and the methodology used to construct a product or deliver a service. So analysis at this stage of the loop, when you're thinking about the diagram, it looks at how things can be done more efficiently to achieve the desired goal. So let's then think about the outputs. Outputs relate to effectiveness. If efficiency is about how well, something's done in relation to processes, outputs relate to effectiveness and are about what you're making or delivering. Have you ever got to the proper outcomes and thought this could be better? If that process was streamlined a bit more, then this output might be better. Think about that. Or should you consider changing what you are producing or trying to achieve, what that outcome is? Or, and when you think about feedback's often overlooked, but this is an essential element of resource management. It really, really is. Without appropriate feedback from each stage, analysing and managing the systems would not be possible. So a key aspect of feedback is choosing the most appropriate measures. So thinking about when you want, surveys, observations, you might want focus groups, things like that. It is considered impossible to manage elements of work that cannot be measured. If you can't measure whether that process is working well, whether that output has been effective, then what's the point? The sensor is a term used to represent the need to consider the feedback you obtain from each and every stage. Inputs, processes and outputs, basically. This considers analysing the feedback and applying judgments to decide one of the 4 options, specifically to change the inputs, change processes, change the outputs, or you might want to just leave everything as it is and just change nothing. But it's important that you also think about the last E. The last E, which is energy. And I really want to make a point of this because energy is possibly the most important and concerns the energy people have in the workplace. The thinking here is that if people are energized, highly motivated, engaged in what they're doing, they will contribute to the effective management of resources and offer ideas for improvements in the efficiency, economy and effectiveness of a specific task maybe, or project. For example, in the planning phase, it's crucial to understand the importance of keeping people motivated, keeping people energized, giving people buy-in, and that will allow for an increased amount of energy and engagement in a specific task or role. The last thing I want to touch upon is estimation, because obviously as someone who's in charge of resources or managing resources within the workplace, it might be part of your role to estimate what resources are needed for what time or whatever, and it's important to focus on these two different areas. If you're thinking about in the planning phase, considering what resources are needed at what point and for how long, it's crucial to understand the importance of accurate estimation. Estimation on a project is simply an assessment of how long, the potential cost of an activity and how long it's going to take for an activity to be completed. It's known estimation is, a dark art. It's simply your best guess, and it's usually based on your experience or the experience of somebody else. We do it daily, whether, estimating how long it'll take to complete a piece of work or, travel through traffic to get to the office. Where you lack experience in a particular discipline, you can seek estimation from others, so it's important to remember that. So an example might be, suppose you're planning to decorate your kitchen. I've never decorated the kitchen before, but you've decorated other rooms. You might want to put your estimation based on that, or you might want to speak to an expert in the kitchen place, like Ren or something, for example, and ask them how long it usually takes. So it's good to be able to get some advice if you need it. One way of estimating is to assess the best case and then the worst case and then the middle case, where the best case will represent like the most optimistic and the worst case will be the most pessimistic. The middle case is usually the most likely. So going back to that example, to decorate a kitchen, we might think it will take 3 days. That might be the best case. The worst case might be that it'll take a week. You might go with the middle case and say, well, I think it would take about 5 days. Managers retain credibility and authority by accurately estimating the effort and time required to complete the work successfully. But it's important to consider as well that as deadlines change for projects, it might be more necessary to complete a project by a specific time. Therefore, maybe it might be needed that more resources might be needed for something in order to be able to meet that deadline. But estimation is just what it says on the tin. It's only an estimation. The most common reason for poor estimation is failure to consider the evidence or the most difficult to control variables. So might be things like the people, thinking about the people's sickness, annual holidays. It might be things like other competing priorities that person has if they're on a project as a secondary responsibility as part of their role. Missed deliveries or unforeseen interpretations, quality failures, quality measures that are in place. All of these can make your estimations, go right outside of the box, that you might estimate a project's going to take a month and it takes 6 months because of unforeseen circumstances that have got in the way of your estimations. Some project managers might choose the worst case situation. So if the best case situation does happen, they've got the resources for it. So it's important to consider that when thinking about resource management. So I hope today it has allowed you to consider resource management as, quite an essential role in an organisation. The links that it has to operations management, resource management, supply chain management and procurement and purchasing as well. If you do have any further questions relating to this topic, please contact me and I'll be happy to answer any questions. Thank you for taking the time to watch this today, and I will see you soon.